Hello, everyone, and welcome to my interview with Amber Kasic. She was living a good, normal life until the passing of her father. And during that experience, it produced an awakening with her. She described it as the most beautiful, painful experience of her life. And after that, she found that she had unique abilities to connect with people who had passed, received messages, and also help people during the dying process. I'm excited to share this interview with you. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry. My guest today is Amber Kasic. She is an evidential medium and end-of-life coach. Her life changed dramatically after the death of her father, November 1st of 2020. Amber, do you want to tell us what life was like before, and then what shifted and changed when your father passed?
Sure. Well, like many people, I was just living a very typical normal life before my father passed. I had been a teacher for about 15 years at that time, and had also kind of moved into an educational consulting role. So teaching was really my identity. Also am still a wife and a mom, and living in a little town in Michigan and just doing life like normal, like everybody else. But that drastically changed when my father died. And looking back, it was sort of right. Well, it's not that we were coming out of COVID, but everyone was sort of going back to work, and we were all sort of figuring it out. And really, that was a gift in a way, his passing during that time, because I could still have a lot of time to just unravel all that I was experiencing. And I had a shared death experience with my dad when he passed, which I had never heard that term before, and was receiving communication from him upon his passing. Although I didn't believe it at the time, I thought I was making it all up in my head. But that communication sort of turned into this whole year-long journey. And in some ways it was very disorienting because I felt so much like I didn't I I had my same personality, my same morals, my same values, my same beliefs, but something about me felt like I didn't even know who I was anymore. And so that whole year was just a journey and growing of my understanding and my expansion that there is so much more to life right here, right here.
We actually did an episode on shared death healing. I'm sorry, shared death experiences, and it's fascinating that that's quite a phenomena that's been going on for so long, and for so long people didn't talk about it because they didn't want to be labeled as weird or strange. Um, and you work a lot in end of life, so my understanding is a lot of people who work in that space are aware of these phenomena, although it's still not super widely talked about.
Yes. And, everyone, pretty much everyone now knows the term near death experience and has an understanding or an idea of what people feel that they've experienced in those types of moments. Shared death experience is a term much less common. I did not have that term to describe my experience. I simply called it an otherworldly experience. And it has a spectrum. So it can range from everything that can be, things that we typically hear. For example, when my aunt passed away, all of a sudden, immediately after, her garage door was going up and down and up and down, and it seemed to be sort of uncontrollable, or lights flickering on and off. When my dad passed in my aunt's home, she had a nice little hutch that had an overhead light, and my dad, she actually had a picture of my dad in there from a motorcycle trip. And during the middle of the night, that light kept turning on just above his picture. So we hear of things like this, which is sort of on one end of the spectrum. And then we have much more personal experiences where people sometimes even feel that they're witnessing their loved one moving into the other side. They see who they're being greeted by. And, this can happen in a meditative state, in dream state. And when they're most fascinating is when they're confirmed. For example, someone suddenly knows that their loved one is passing and has a whole experience of what's happening, and maybe they're on a plane and then they learn that that person was passing at that time. And I also work now as a volunteer to support some research around shared death experiences, and those are sort of my favorite, the ones where they're verified. And again, sometimes even with people where passing was completely unexpected. No one was terminally ill, and they have this moment of transcendence and sometimes a reunion in their own meditative consciousness space with their loved one. The possibilities to life truly are endless. We have no idea of the expansiveness of which we are a part, but we can learn not only through understanding, like these types of podcasts, but also through our own felt experiences.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you. And at some point, it went from being, okay, a couple little coincidences, maybe I'm reading something into something, to, oh my gosh, this is something I can completely rely on. What was that point for you?
Oh gosh. Well, it was sort of a trickling journey of belief. My dad passed on November 1st. We had that beautiful shared death experience. And when I left his house, right after his passing, I was in full joy. And I remember, I was blaring music on my laptop.
Tell us about that moment, because I don't think our listeners are familiar with that, what that was like for you.
Sure. Well, in that actual shared death experience, my dad passed of cancer, so he was, in hospice care at home, and I was lying alongside him, me in a recliner and him in the hospice bed in the living room, and I was holding his hand. And of course, it was very painful because I'd already had my last conversation with him. He had been unconscious for a few days. And very naturally, all of my thoughts were kind of consumed just about I'm never going to hear his voice again, and he's never going to see my son start kindergarten, and all that sort of stuff. And almost in order to stop the pain of all that thinking, I just stopped thinking, which is pretty rare for all of us, right? And in that absence of the thinking, what was underneath was simply unconditional love. And
Mm.
my thoughts were replaced with, well, right now my dad is still here. Right now his hand is still warm. He's still my father, all these kinds of things. And as I was just sort of in that state of full presence and in that moment, in a way, surrender, I felt, well, first I saw sort of just these hues of purple swirling in my mind's vision. I didn't think anything of it other than, oh, that's weird. Like, why am I seeing all those colors? And then I felt a warmth sort of encompass me from the crown of my head all the way to the tips of my toes. And I just remember thinking, the sun must be kind of coming in the window and playing tricks on me. But then I felt with full clarity what I can only describe as a force. It was like wind, but not because it wasn't physical and it wasn't against my skin. But I felt the whoosh of this force come in my back and right to my heart center, which is a word I never used at that time, but it was here in the center of my chest. And it was just this force inside of my body, is how it felt. And it started doing slow circles, just like this, almost like, are you noticing? Are you aware? And the feeling was so new, I had no time to judge it. I couldn't even analyze it because I've never had an experience like this before. And that slow circling sort of paused and slowly went to my shoulder. And again, I was just following it with my awareness, sort of just immersed in whatever this experience was. And then that feeling went down my arm and into my hand, and my hand was holding my dad's hand. And I just knew with total certainty that feeling went into my dad too. And I was overcome with a sense of peace and this idea of everything is fine, so much so that I wanted to smile, and he is well, and all is well, and we are eternally bonded. And what does that mean? Someone's about to pass. It was such a feeling of, don't worry, we're eternally bonded, and this is all fine. And I had such love and joy with me. I gave him a big hug. I didn't know if he could hear me, although, you know, I know now. Well, one, hearing is our last sense to go scientifically, but also um, loved ones' souls absolutely can perceive things that we think that they cannot in physical form. And I hugged him and I just said, Dad, I don't know what that was, but I know you felt that too. And you take all that love and light with you, which wasn't a phrase I used in my life at that time. So I'm not even sure where that came from. Um, and it's okay if you go now. Just leave the old news behind, which was my way of saying, don't take the junk with you. We all have junk. He wasn't perfect in life. There were some hard things. And I felt intuitively very much, really all along his journey of passing, I felt intuitively, I need him to pass with peace. And I found my own ways to sort of support that without explicitly having the conversation. And that's what was all wrapped up in that moment. And I left the house. And like I said, I was, you know, blasting music and singing. And I just remember thinking, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel this elation, this joy? But I did. That being said, that's not when he actually passed, meaning took his last breath. That was at about 3 in the afternoon, and he passed at about, well, we don't know what time to write on the death certificate because he passed during daylight savings time change on 111, which I know now is no accident, but it was somewhere around 3:30, 4:30 in the morning. I was there and holding his hand when he took his last breath, actually. But I know now that his soul actually transitioned in that moment of the shared death experience. And I know as a medium now, because I've a few times communicated with people that were in the process of their passing, which is possible at times. We see death as everyone's here until the breath is gone. And that's just not really what's happening at the expansiveness of life and the expansion of our consciousness and us starting to get more in touch with who we are as a soul. It truly is for many people this transition process of slowly stepping out of who we are in physical form and into our true essence in the beyond.
So, what were some of the next events that took place that made you think, okay, this is more than a one time thing? There's something that has changed in me. I have a different role in the world.
Well, I will say that I like to share this story and then I can more directly answer that question. But even hours after he passed, I went for a walk just to decompress from the whole week. It was, very emotional being with someone at their passing. And I wasn't so much grieving because, in some sense, I still had that sense of well being and peace with me, but it was an emotional release. And I was just sort of sitting in the parking lot of the park, crying a little bit. And I suddenly heard my dad's voice in my mind, like his actual voice in my mind, not outside of me, but it was like he was talking. And his voice said, "Get out of the car, Amby. You've cried enough tears over me in your life." And I kind of stopped crying and I just thought to myself, well, that's true. I have cried more tears than a daughter should over her dad. But of course, I'm just making that up, right? Like my psyche invented that voice. But I got out of the car and I started walking. And I just said to myself, I didn't think I was talking to my dad, but I said in my own mind, in my own heart space, I had just said, gee, Dad, I hope you're all right. And without a moment hesitation, his voice was right there in my mind. And he said, I'm just fine, Amby. I'm going to stick around here a while and help some people. And I'm happy about it. And I did stop walking because in that moment, I did have this understanding. It's not that I believed that was my dad, but there was something that I did understand, which was if I, as Amber, were inventing with my psyche his voice in response to that, that's not what I would have said. Amber would have said, I'm in heaven. It's so beautiful here. I got to see my dog again, and my granddad greeted me, just like I told you that that's who I hoped would greet me when I passed. I would have come up with a whole heaven is beautiful thing. I would have never in my imagination come up with, I'm going to stick around here a while and help some people. And I would not hear his voice again in my mind for some months. The journey started unfolding just with that curiosity, like it does for many people, seeing what we think are signs and synchronicities, but sometimes they would be so glaring that I couldn't ignore. And then I started feeling his presence. It would just feel like a pressure change in the air around me. My ear would be ringing, my face would itch, and I would notice these patterns over time of every time I think I feel his presence, I'm noticing these other things in my physical body. But of course, I like science. I live in a very logical world. I like logic. I am very grounded and a normal human being. And I wanted, in a way, to find a way that I'm just inventing these feelings, because how can I prove that I feel his presence? I don't know how else to describe it except that I do. And of course, naturally, you wonder, is your psyche making that up? But some signs would happen that were beyond explanation. And while simultaneously, I started reading about things like I didn't even really believe in mediums, but I didn't know things existed like the International Association of Near Death Studies or the Shared Crossing nonprofit project. So I didn't think to go to academia to understand my experiences. I went to books by mediums just to see if I can make some kind of connection. And I was finding connection in my experiences. As a fun example, one night I was reading on my Kindle, like a digital, on my phone, and I never read digitally. I love physical books, but I was so hungry to just find information that at 10 p.m. at night, I'm just downloading whatever I can. And I was reading this book by a medium, and, it was a little bit later in the evening, and I was reading it with the intent of answering this question. Am I really hearing from my dad? That's what I wanted to know. And I sort of started falling asleep a little bit. And mind you, this is, I think, pretty sure the first time I'd ever used Kindle on my cell phone. And when I just sort of came out of it, because I sort of felt like a light sleep, maybe just 10 minutes later, I look at the passage and there's a passage highlighted. I didn't even know you could highlight. This is literally the first time I ever read digitally. And there was a passage highlighted. I still have a screenshot of this. And the passage was, yes, you indeed really are hearing from your loved one, like quote unquote. That there was nothing around it highlighted, literally just that sentence. And it felt in some ways like such a confirmation. Even if my hand in my light sleep clicked numerous buttons to get to the highlight space, and then I happen to highlight exactly that phrase and nothing else around it, that just really seems like a tall order of coincidence. But again, I like logic. I'm human, your brain naturally goes to, okay, well, it is extremely unlikely, but it doesn't mean it's not possible that my hand could have done that while I was sleeping, right? But the journey just kept unfolding. And one thing I had read in numerous places was, if you are experiencing all this from your loved one, then starting a meditation journey is likely going to deepen your connection. I had not been a meditator before, maybe 10 years prior to that. For, a few months I tried because I heard it was nice and a good thing to do, but it wasn't something that was a part of my daily practices or rituals or anything at all. But I started a meditation journey, and instantly, here was my dad. And his voice returned, except this time he was telling me things I could not possibly know. Things like, call your mom right now. She's sad and eating pudding. And I would call her, and she was sad and she was eating pudding. There was something going on in the house that was broken. It was something my dad would normally fix. And she was the one dealing with it all. And so these types of evidential moments and they were numerous over and over, he would tell me where to find things. My mom couldn't find his set of car keys, and he told me where to find them. Now, this is very uncommon. I still have the whole text I sent her and a screenshot because it was amazing, and they were right where he said they were. Um, so they were verified communications, and yet my brain was still looking for ways that I was making it up. And and I now know, though, years later into this journey, there is something that happens when you allow yourself in a way to be curious about spiritual experiences. That could be what you're experiencing yourself. It could be because you went to a medium. You have to let the love in. Let the love in. It will expand your whole world. It will expand your happiness. It will expand your sense of peace. It will expand your well being. It will expand your consciousness. You have to let the love in. And what my dad was trying to do for me was to get me to let the love in, which was also a very personal healing journey. Um, I was a very kind hearted person before all of my experiences with him, but I was also kind of jaded by life. I hated hearts. Don't ever get me a heart necklace if you're dating me or married to me. I started getting grumpy about Christmas. I started getting grumpy about all the obligations and the holidays and sending cards. Like I was kind of getting a little bit grinchy. Truly. And his communication with me and helping me understand that we're a part of such a greater reality and it is loving and all powerful and all beautiful really expanded my world, not only in how I'm serving and showing up in the world now in my work, but just in my personal life. He gave me the mountaintop perspective that spirit often has, to see just how we are as humans and our humanity. And it's sort of like looking at the bigger picture and feeling a sense of peace with it all. I'm
I absolutely
very
love the
grateful
concept
to
of
him for
let
that.
love in.
Yeah.
That's tremendous.
Yep.
Um, and what would you say are some, you mentioned meditation. I know you're a fan of mindfulness. What would you say, I mean, if you were just giving general life advice for what are 3 things we can do each day to let the love in, what would you say?
Yeah. Well, mindfulness is huge because what mindfulness does is it brings you into the present moment. And this is key for anybody. It's key for me. I can struggle with connections if I'm a little bit chaotic and I'm not balanced. And so the more we practice mindfulness, then the more we're just being in touch with what's right here, right now. And mindfulness doesn't have to be, I'm going to sit down and meditate. Mindfulness can be when I'm having breakfast or when I'm having lunch or dinner. I'm really just sitting and enjoying my meal. I'm thinking about how it tastes. I'm looking at the nice colors. I'm appreciating the fact that I made this, even if it's not in the best presentation. It's sitting with what's right in front of you in full appreciation without the thoughts of all the other things of life. And you can do that at most any moment in the day. That brings you into practicing presence. Why does that matter? Because it's in presence that your loved ones are trying to reach you. And that can be also through signs and synchronicities. It's not uncommon for people to experience them. It's the fact of, are you aware of them? Just like I was explaining how it took me probably about 2 months to realize that every time I felt my dad's presence, the left side of my face would itch. It wasn't until about 2 months later that I suddenly went, "Ding, ding, ding. Oh my goodness, I've been feeling this all along," but I was never, like, fully aware in my conscious awareness. So mindfulness is very helpful to bring you into the present moment. Meditation is important because it's very grounding, um, but I would also add that we often think spiritual connections happen up here. They do not. They happen here. They happen in our body.
Mhm.
The brain, in my opinion, while I can't say this with science, but in my opinion, the brain is processing what's being experienced in consciousness. It's just picking up on it. It's not that the communication is happening here. The communication is happening through your groundedness, your presence, and your love. So when you sit in meditation, you don't have to have an empty mind exactly, although we do want to sort of try to calm our mind. But the way to do that is not to tell yourself, stop thinking. The way to do that is to be in your body. How can you do that? Feel the center of your chest with your mind's awareness. Feel your gut area. Notice the chairs supporting you. Take relaxing breaths in a way that don't feel forceful, but are truly just slowing your entire system down. And then a key component is add love. So think of your loved ones, think of your pets, your children, hobbies, favorite places. I love to think about sunshine because it's like medicine for me, especially in the winter. So the things that bring you joy and love and appreciation, while you might be thinking them, you want to feel that joy and that love and appreciation in your, chest space, your heart space, in your body. That's where our loved ones are. They're in that state of gratitude and appreciation and joy. So the more you're bringing yourself to that state through calmness and groundedness and presence, you're getting closer and closer to connecting with your loved ones yourself. So we ground, we have our heart awareness, and then your why. Don't forget to state, I would love to connect with you, so and so. It's a journey. You have to allow yourself space and time and acclimation for your body to kind of, and your just overall being to get used to a sense of presence and mindfulness. But state your intention. They hear you. They absolutely hear you, even if you don't hear back. And once we're in that beautiful state where we're calm and grounded and we feel that love and that gratitude and we made our intention, then we just sit in the beauty. That's all you have to do. It's your only job. Sit in the beauty and tell your mind, pay attention to thoughts, feelings, and sensations not my own. Because it might start like you don't even know why, but you just sort of feel like a blanket is being put on your shoulders. Or you might just feel a rush of warmth or even chill, and maybe some goosebumps arise. Maybe you feel a repeated tickle on the back of your hair. That's your energetic system acclimating to and trying to help you be aware of how your loved ones are trying to get your attention. So it's a developmental journey, and you don't need a half hour a day. You don't. As long as you're understanding and kind of committing to, I know that this is going to take some time, but I want to go on this path of expansion and letting that love in, then even just 8 minutes a day, or even 4 days a week, 8 minutes a day is enough to sort of get you started.
And you had a lot of crazy coincidences happen to you. I mean, obviously, it got to the point of statistical, like, ridiculousness that this could be happening, even beyond the stories that you've already told. What was the one that really made you realize, "Oh, this is my job here on Earth?"
Oh, my job here on earth. Yeah. Well, now I serve as a medium, and that took a while for me to accept. I didn't like using that word because, it's kind of a stigma. And
And
uh,
tell us about that. What was it like growing up in a traditionally religious family
yeah,
and then having to reconcile, "Oh, there's this direct connection that I'm experiencing that I don't know how that fits in the model of what I was raised."
sure, sure. Well, first I'll share for me, probably at this time in my life, more so than a religious piece, I was just more afraid of what people would think of me
Mm.
at the end of the day. I didn't want to be a medium. I didn't sign up for this. I wasn't trying to be a medium. But the connections with my dad were turning into, without me trying, connections with others. I could be in the grocery store and all of a sudden I'm just checking on my groceries, but all of a sudden I just feel a woman behind me and she's in her 50s. I know she's a mother and I know she died of emphysema because I actually feel it in my chest, like in a physical way, just for a moment. And I would just have this knowing this is the woman or the mother of the woman behind me in the checkout lane. That doesn't happen to me now, but it needed to because at the time, because I wasn't trying to do this. It was happening to me. And every time I believed something, something new would unfold. So once I really believed, I know my dad is really connecting with me, now it started with others. And this is how I know, in some way I was just meant for this path. But when I really accepted myself as a medium, where I said, I'm a medium and I just have to accept this. It was on my dad's birthday, a year after he passed. We drove, my whole family and I, 8 hours to my childhood, like teenage home. My parents had built this log cabin in the middle of the woods, and it was kind of my dad's dream. And I always told him that I would spread some of his ashes behind that house where he walked my lab, and it was just his dream spot. And so we drove up there for his birthday weekend to do that. And so I knocked on the door of his home. There was a man living there now I was going to be in his backyard kind of. I wanted to tell him what we were doing. And so we made a little chit chat. I told him why I was there. He gave me permission. um, and I did pick up on the fact that he just seemed very sad. And he did mention that oh, I'm alone in the house now and it's too big for me. And there was just a real sadness to his tone. While we did that nice tradition and spread my dad's ashes, and later that day, by now I'd had a daily meditation practice. And as I sat in my meditation, all of a sudden, I just feel this man's presence, and I just have a knowing it's the brother of that man in the home, in the log home. And he helped me feel pinpricks, like if he gave himself daily injections. I actually felt them in my stomach. And I thought, oh, I wonder if he had diabetes, but I know he gave himself daily injections. And he showed me like an apple and a chalkboard, which I know because I was a teacher and then he was a teacher. Um, and he had this fond memory of he and his brother making snowmen, which I know, most people do. I get that. And then he showed me, all I saw was special bird. I didn't even know what. I just knew there was a special bird and a box. It like kind of came together. And I'm just writing all of this down on my notepad. And then I feel a woman come into my awareness. And I just had the knowing this is the man's mother. And she showed me that she lived to be very, very old, like well into her 90s, that she loved her daily walks to the mailbox and her mailbox flowers. Um, and she just wanted to give gratitude to her son for taking care of her. And she said, and for taking care of him. And I knew she meant the brother, or who I felt was the brother. And so there was these messages of gratitude. And then as she exited, she showed me a white and green kitchen pot holder with like this, or it was a white kitchen pot holder with this yellow and green flower in the middle and this little yellow and green border. And I wrote down on the paper, passed down in the family. I knew it was special in that way. And then they exited my awareness. And I looked at all of this on the paper and I thought to myself, I can't just go up to this man's house and be like, I spoke with you. That's so not A, that is violating so many boundaries. B, that's not my sense of personal integrity. C, it's weird. Like all the things. But it felt like a mandate. I mean, I felt like I had to in my internal body. And so I came up with a plan that felt integritous to me and honored this mandate, which was that I was going to go to his house. I was going to tell him that, hey, I've been experiencing these connections with my dad. I wouldn't call myself a medium at the time. And I feel that I experienced a connection with a mother and a brother of yours. Would you just like to see the paper? That way he could choose whether or not he wanted to call me crazy and slam the door in my face or if he was going to take the paper. So that's what I did. I drove to the house. As I got out of the car, he was already coming out of the house. And I was just I wanted to just make small talk. And this is really important to the story and such a beautiful moment. The spirit setup is totally a creative spirit setup. I see in the corner of my mind a little cross in the yard, like when someone buries a dog. And I had a dog that lived there. So I use that to make small talk. Oh, Larry, I see you got a cross over there in the yard. And you must have had a dog that lived here. We had a dog too named Thunder. And by now he's coming over to me and he looks at me and he gives me this smile on his face. And the smile to me says, should I really tell her? Because there's a big pause. And then he must have decided I felt safe. And he said, actually, it's not a dog. My brother, I took care of him for a while when he was really sick, and he loved hummingbirds. And one day, a hummingbird flew into these big windows here and it died. And he was actually really sad. And so we buried it and we put it in this box that we made. And that's what that is. And I looked down on my paper. What's one of the things the brother showed me that I written down right there? Special bird in a box. In that moment, I felt safe because I knew I was meant to give this to him in that moment. And I needed not worry anymore. And it's not lost on me that I did not even notice that the day before. And I only noticed it in that moment. And it was that specific thing and that evidence. That's a part of how spirit works when they want to pull out all the stops. They snag your attention to things. It's like they're pulling little puppet strings sometimes. You still have your free will. I could have chosen to not say anything and just say, "Hi, Larry," and move on. But I know that they did that to help me. And so I told him, and I asked him if he'd like to see the paper, and he looked at that paper, and he said my brother had diabetes, so did give himself daily injections. My mom loved her mailbox flowers, and she was the one that would get the mail every day, even at the age of 95. And then he said, "Hold on a second." And he went into the house, and he came out a few minutes later, and in his hand, I still have a picture of it, he had that kitchen pot holder, the yellow and green flower. And he said, my grandfather, so his mother's dad, made this for her, and it was passed down in the family. And he said, "This was buried in boxes in the basement. There is no way you could have known about this." And like that for him was the thing. And we just kind of both stared at each other in awe. We exchanged phone numbers, and he called me about a week later and he said, "Amber, I've been thinking about this all week. I believe what happened, but I have a question for you. Why me?" And I smiled and I said, "Larry, I love that you're asking this because for a whole year I've been asking, why me? Why is this all happening to me?" And the answer is the same, because you are worthy. And this is true for every single one of you listeners right now. Every single one of you is already divine, already whole, already worthy. You don't have to be the perfect person or the best person or even a good person to deserve this love. The love is just here. It just is. And he told me this has changed my perspective on life. And I was really depressed before this. And you have no idea how much this has just changed my whole outlook. And
Yeah.
when I hung up that phone, I said in the kitchen, "I'm a medium and I have to accept this," because it was so touching and so beautiful to not only, you know, to be able to provide the messages from his loved ones, but now his expansion, and he'll take that in his own way, in his own path, but it's now touching his heart in a way that creates more well being. My heart has been touched with better, just more well being because of all my experiences with my dad. And that is the point of all of this is for us to see the love that is right here. It is right here. It's right with us all the time. We just have to expand our view.
What do you feel like the biggest mistakes that people are making is?
Around specifically trying to connect or just in general in life?
Not seeing that they are already love, already light, already divine. What's the biggest mistake that people are making? Why are we forgetting?
Well, some of it isn't even our fault. It's just our collective consciousness. And this is why we're on a human growth journey. We're not only growing as individuals, but we're growing collectively as humans across time, right? Um, and I think I even hate to call it a mistake because I don't think it's a choice. It's just sort of the way that we are in our culture. So I don't really want to use the word mistake, but just the the way that we are conditioned is to believe that all of our identity is wrapped up in our gender, what we do for a living, how we show up to others, our political beliefs, all the stuff of life. Let me tell you something. That is not who you are. Yes, it's a part of the you in this human body form, but when you pass a lot of that, you're leaving here. Even all of your just beliefs about how life functions and politics and all that kind of stuff, you're not taking that with you because it's not really who you are. That's not what's important. And so it's not a mistake, but so many of us, and hey, this was me too, we think our identities are the conditioning and our story, but there's a more expansive part of you with a capital Y that is more just of your real essence. And in that essence is peace, love, joy, and gratitude and appreciation in your own way. And it doesn't mean the you with the lowercase y, all the stuff of you, isn't valuable, but there's more to you. And there's more to everybody. And so when you when you start to get an experience of that more transcendent you with a capital Y, or I am, as they call it in spiritual circles, you begin to see everybody as I am. And pretty soon you realize nobody's more worthy than anybody else. Nobody's right and others wrong. We're all just in this conglomerate mess of our conditioning. And the way out, or I should say the way through, is to start to come to understand that you are not only this stuff. It doesn't mean we're all supposed to be the same. That's really important for me. We're not all supposed to be the same, have the same beliefs, the same personalities, but we are all supposed to, or I think it would be a very transcendent, evolved way of being, is to be able to see beyond the stories of all of us and experience more union and new ways of collaborative collaboration and new ways of being. Because once you feel this about people and you feel your own worthiness, it's kind of impossible, close to impossible, to go back to that same sense of separation. I'm angry at this person and I really dislike this person or I hate this person. These things put you on a mountaintop. They give you a mountaintop perspective life.
I love that. Joe Dispenza likes to say the universe can only give you what we feel worthy to receive.
Ah, yeah, that makes a
Uh,
lot of sense to me.
do you have any other words of wisdom to somebody that really is struggling with feeling worthy? That because it's yeah, I know it is conditioning. I mean, I do hypnotherapy, and I just know there's all this stuff that gets programmed in there at an early age, and once the subconscious mind can see, oh, I'm not an iPhone 4, I'm really an iPhone 16. It'll be willing to make that shift. But when you're talking to people, when you're sharing practices with people, what do you feel like are the biggest keys to helping somebody experience their worth?
Yeah, I sort of feel this is the human journey. I don't know one human that hasn't struggled with self-worth, which to me is different from self-esteem. Self-esteem is I can genuinely say and know what I appreciate about myself. That to me is a simple way of looking at self-esteem, whereas self-worth is much deeper and it reaches more to that kind of soul aspect of us and how we really feel about ourselves. Um, and to your question of what can we do, you're never going to get that from external sources ever. Not from other people loving you the right way that you think you need means loving you the right way. You're not going to get it from buying things or getting that great job. You have to take an inner journey. So simply set the intention of, I really want to know who I am. Who am I? And sort of in that journey we talked about earlier, mindfulness and meditation, when you couple that with the questioning of your intent, who am I? Help me understand who I am. All of us are divinely guided. So I have zero doubt in my mind that with a genuine intention to want to discover that for yourself, you will be put on the path. It might take 2 months, it might take 2 years, but there will always be new uncoverings and learnings to have had. And this is reminding me of a quote. I want to grab this paper really quick because I wrote this down. I had a workshop a month ago that's really relevant here, um, just about the afterlife. And as I was preparing and sitting in meditation, I got this quote to read to the audience of that workshop that I provided. And it's really relevant to this question. So I want to read it. So this was directly from, we'll just call it greater consciousness. Every single one of you that is here is already being touched by God, already connected. Give yourself grace, as the spiritual journey is a journey of uncovering and in some ways undoing and finally opening. And that to me is the path to knowing who you really are, coupled with the grace that will be given to you by the greater consciousness, however you want to name that: God, spirit, source, whatever works for you.
You mentioned two really important words when you had that first amazing experience with your dad when he was passing, focus, and surrender. You changed your focus because you came out of, you talked about how you had saved a bunch of messages that he had sent you because you wanted to open them up after he had passed because you felt like you were going to lose connection with him, and that you uh, regretted that later because you realized you were taking yourself out of the present moment. Uh, so just the focus, which is so critical, and surrender. Um, what would you say to somebody who feels like they did something that was so bad that they can't forgive themselves, God won't forgive them? What do you say to that person?
In probably close to 1,000 mediumship sessions that I've been doing in the last handful of years, both in practice and then as a professional, almost 100% of the time, everyone has come through with love and learning to share on their journeys. I'll get to the couple of times I didn't necessarily feel that in a minute and explain that. But I have encountered people in spirit who've shared how they've hurt others, sometimes in some I'll even say very severe ways. And I know it's very difficult for a human mind to wrap our head around, including me, because we like justice and we like fairness and we kind of like the idea of punishment and goodness, right? In a way. But at the essence of life, this is so much bigger than how we mentally construct how the world should be. And when we, in my experience from my felt experiences, when we move into the beyond, we're going to fully appreciate all the ways, both positive and negative, that we've impacted others through loving kindness, meaning we're helped and we're supported. And the point is to grow in our soul. So, for example, this is not a severe example, but as an example, I had a brother come through in a connection. His sister was my client, and he brought me into this moment. And I described the moment. I know you're at a restaurant. The two of you love to like try new foods, and you would go out to new types of restaurants together, like cultural foods and things like that. And I can see you. He's showing me the scene of the two of you being in this restaurant. And you were trying to tell him about an experience you had. And he got really dismissive of you. And then he got angry of you because I could feel he was helping me feel the emotions that he had. And he basically didn't want to hear what you had experienced. And this impacted you greatly. I can feel it. I feel all the sadness now. He's helping me feel your emotions. And now I understand that you two didn't talk for a while because you felt so unloved and dismissed by your brother. And she had confirmed all of that was true. And now here was he wanting to make amends and apologies, saying, I get it now. I see the bigger picture. I'm sorry I didn't validate you. I'm sorry that I dismissed you so much. That's a maybe a smaller example, but those in spirit get automatically put on that mountaintop, and so will you. So we're all going to see the ways that we impacted others, both good and bad, but we are lovingly guided through it all, no matter what you've done. I have felt people that were severely abusive, all kinds of things that are very difficult in this human life. There have only been maybe 3 times where I just perceived that a soul was sort of in a difficult journey of a situation. One in which my own dad, in my mind's vision, as I was starting a mediumship connection, he grabbed a man by the shirt. Now, that sounds silly. Like, do people really wear clothes in spirit? It's not really about that, but it's his way of showing me in my consciousness that this man is here. And he grabbed him by the shirt, and I hear my dad's voice, and he goes, "You come here." And as that man came into my awareness, I could feel he was terrified.
Mm.
He was so scared, and I almost felt his energy like this, like cowering like this. And then he just started spewing all of the awful things that he had done to his family member, my client in the session, very explicitly. I did this, I did this, I did this. And almost like the second he kind of just let it all out, I felt a sense of release, and then he was exited my awareness already. So there was not a deep apology. There was not any of that stuff, but I felt the essence behind it all, which was he needed to just say all of the things as an act of love to his daughter, to be validating that I did these things. And I felt that to be a part of his own soul growth. So, I don't really believe in this idea of hell and that kind of stuff. I think that when we go in the beyond, we can limit ourselves by not allowing our own soul growth journey. And that's sort of what I felt with that man. And I've had just a very few handful of experiences that were sort of similar to that. Um, and why wait? Just start now, knowing that you, no matter what you've done, are already divine, already whole, and already worthy. And coming to know that will just make it more and more difficult. Not, but of course, we all, err as humans, but it will make it more and more difficult for us to cause others harm because you'll have a bigger picture.
Beautiful. I recently had Sean Leonard, who's a indigenous medium, and he talks about how everybody has because in the medium world, it's kind of known that some spirits stay behind and they don't head for the light. And he says, well, they all can. They just free will is at play, and they don't choose it. So that's an interesting truth that it's a choice,
Yeah.
and like you say, why wait?
Yeah, and that's sort of that that is sort of that felt experience without being able to use exactly those words, but that is the felt experience I was having about that man, and there were just a couple of others. Um, but even in then, they're being lovingly guided. He was being guided to come to this connection and validate for his daughter so that he could release and move some of his stuff through. So, let the love in
Love that.
now and in the beyond.
So, I had some words from Ram Dass because do you still work with people that are passing over?
So, as an end of life coach, I help people before they pass prepare holistically for the end of life. That's Can I serve as an end of life doula as well? Yes. But actually, most of my end of life coaching clients are just preparing for their passing in a holistic way across 5 domains of well being. So, we think of in life as preparing for passing financially, making the arrangements. This is more, how do you want to honor your life? What are we celebrating and how are we going to do that? What do you need to make peace with? It's more of a holistic, what spiritually do you want to just express, with no agenda. The client's agenda is not my agenda, it's their own agenda. I'm just here to coach you through all the right questionings to feel this sense of closure. And there is some planning and things to do around end of life celebration and how we want to communicate with others and how we want to be cared for at the end of life. So more of my clients are actually in that process than I am serving at bedside. Our culture prepares for death so poorly,
True.
when really we should be preparing for it like the best birthday of our lives.
Mm. Ram Dass said a few things. I just thought I'd read them. He says that's when the ego falls away, love becomes uncomplicated, fear dissolves into truth, the acceleration of spiritual awakening feels like coming home, and heals relationship with the illusion of control.
Oh, yes. And you know what? I experienced all those and I'm still here. Oh, the illusion of control. Isn't that a good one? Yeah.
So, Amber, thank you so much for being here today. How do people follow you, stay in touch with you? What are your offerings that people can get more of these goodies so that they can have more of the experience of knowing that they are already loved and they're loved no matter what they have done or not done?
Sure. Well, my website is www.natureswayopen.com. And that's pretty much, social media handles on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and that kind of thing. The same thing at Nature's Way Open. Uh, my main offerings are mediumship sessions. I love doing that. It's very heart-based connection. Also, the end of life coaching, as I said, and you don't have to be at the end of life. I have clients that have a terminal illness, but I have a lot of clients who are not terminally ill, and just a very life affirming process overall. And so there's that, and I also do periodically some classes online in order to help you really put practices in place that help you come to that sense of soul self that we've been talking about. They're not really about teaching mediumship, and much more. I have a real passion for guiding others on this same type of journey, discovering your own divinity. And I love helping people with that greatly.
So that feels like that's your clear mission, is to helping people discover that divinity within.
Absolutely. Whether it's through mediumship, end of life coaching, or kind of their own soul journey exploration.
Final question. If you were to go back and talk to 7-year-old Amber, what would you say to her?
Well, I hear my dad's voice right now. It's why it's making me laugh. And I had to pause because I couldn't answer the question for myself because I hear him. And I feel him saying, like, he gives me the essence of keep this childlike spirit. At some point, I got pretty jaded by life. And, I became so serious. So then the quote I heard from him was, don't take life so seriously. And it made me laugh because he would say that while he was giving me the essence of keeping this childlike spirit. And I think to myself, I would say, never give up hope. If I could go back, never give up hope. Anything is possible. Anything.
Beautiful. Folks, thank you for being here with us today on Next Level Healing. Please share this with anybody that would get value and hope and love from this. And leave us a comment, click like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing. This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions are expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.